Yesterday, of course, was Donald Trump's arraignment. He went in, pleaded not guilty, but that's not the story of the day, of course. The story of the day was Donald Trump's supporters that were outside that courthouse. They were, of course, lining the highways down there in South Florida. And in the days leading up to Donald Trump turning himself in, these same supporters had gotten online and threatened all sorts of violence against we don't know who, but they said they would be armed. Many of them said, "We want blood." You even had two Republican lawmakers who basically called for civil war because Donald Trump was being indicted. Luckily, none of that came to fruition. The only thing that did happen, of course, was a bomb scare by some idiot MAGA supporter at the federal courthouse, but of course that didn't go anywhere. There was no actual bomb. So the day went off relatively without a hitch. And nobody is happier about that than Donald Trump's own handlers. Because according to reports, Donald Trump's people working on his campaign were absolutely freaking out over the prospect of his supporters doing something incredibly stupid while Donald Trump was en route to the courthouse. Specifically, these handlers, these campaign managers and folks like that, they thought that any kind of negative publicity surrounding this event, if Trump supporters became angry, if they became violent, that this would turn into basically another January 6th, which they then believed, of course, would cost Donald Trump all of his support in the 2024 presidential election. Now, don't get me wrong, we did have some racists down there in that group. Of course, at one point they were shouting at a black counter-protester. Things did get ugly right there. But of course, nothing that rose to the level of what we saw on January 6th. Because as it turns out, most of these Trump supporters are, of course, nothing more than keyboard warriors. I'm willing to bet that most of those people calling for bloodshed online didn't even have the balls to show up down there in South Florida to see their favorite cult leader get marched into the courtroom. They're weak, and that's a good thing for this country. But here's the problem. We did see an escalation, right? They promised similar things when he got indicted in Manhattan on those 34 counts. They promised even more horrific actions when he got indicted on these 37 counts in South Florida. We're not done with indictments, okay? We've got Georgia coming by the end of the summer. We have the more important Jack Smith investigation, which is Trump's attempts to overturn the 2020 election. So we could get more indictments there. And as more and more indictments pile up against Donald Trump, hell, he's already facing 71 different counts right now between Manhattan and the federal court in Florida. His supporters will become more agitated, they will become more angry, and they could become more violent in the future. Luckily, they are stupid enough to post these threats online, so law enforcement does understand that they have to engage in a more, stringent kind of screening process. They have to be on high alert, and hopefully that continues. Because if more indictments do get handed down in the future, Trump supporters will grow increasingly crazy, and that could eventually lead to violence. Thanks for watching, everyone, and well, here comes the awkward part at the end of the video where I ask you to like, comment, and share, and subscribe for more content from Ring of Fire. Also, you should consider becoming a member for some exclusive content and perks, including early access videos and exclusive videos. Check out the link in the description.